Fantastic. Well, welcome everybody. It's really a privilege to be here with you. I am the Managing Director of the Data Collaboratives for Local Impact at the Millennium Challenge Corporation, and I'll be your host today. So we heard in the opening session of this third UN World Data Forum that we urgently need more timely, quality, and open data. And it is really more critical than ever to have that, to guide our progress towards the SDGs amidst all the uncertainties, especially some of the ones that we've been faced with in the last year with the global pandemic, and to plan more inclusive economic recovery. We have also heard that innovative data sources are really useful in this process, and digital tools and data are disrupting development. Really through fascinating developments in data science and machine learning, as well as artificial intelligence that have the potential to transform this space and services in education, healthcare, as well as economic opportunity. Yes, we really are amidst a data revolution. Data is powerful. So I would say that this is also a good time and a good moment to think about who has the skills to use this data and ways to narrow some of the crucial gender data gaps. And this is what this discussion will be about today, empowering women to join the data revolution. So I am really excited to be here with you and four amazing, accomplished women speakers and guests. First, Mar Carpinelli, who is a senior data scientist and leads the America's Economic Graph Policy Research at LinkedIn. We also have the pleasure to have with us today Margot Gerritsen. And I really feel like no one is better placed to speak about women in data science than she is. She directed Stanford University's Institute for Computational and Mathematical Engineering, served as the Senior Associate Dean of Educational Affairs at the School of Earth Sciences. And in 2015, she started an incredible initiative called the Women in Data Science Initiative. I'm also thrilled to be joined today by Maharia Tunga. Maharia is the co-founder of the Tanzania Data Lab, that is already making a huge impact on the ability of many to use data. She's also the lecturer at the University of Dar es Salaam. Welcome, Maharia. And finally, Katerina Ntep, Deputy Vice President at the Millennium Challenge Corporation. Kat has more than 30 years of practical experience in the development space. And she's really passionate also about the economic empowerment of women and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Of course, we also want to hear from the audience and feel just a little bit more connected with all of you, despite our virtual setting here today. So please do use the chat function on the Whova app to post, let us know where you're connecting from, post any reactions and questions that you may have over the course of this session. So I am going to begin with you, Mar. Mar, I am really excited to hear a bit more what you have to say about your work at LinkedIn, to better understand some of the trends related to the future workforce, or I should say maybe even the present workforce, and specifically some of the opportunities, constraints and opportunities that women face. So I'm turning it over to you, Mar.
Thank you, Agnieszka, for the introduction. Good evening and good morning, everyone. My name is Marca Panelli, and I work at LinkedIn's Economic Graph in the intersection between data science, economics, and public policy. I'm not sure the slides are up. Do we see the slides? Okay, so
I see the slides, Smart. You can maybe proceed. I'm sure that my co-pilot here in the background will try to put them on slideshow. Yes.
Perfect. I can get started anyway. So very quickly, what we call the economic graph at LinkedIn is really all the data that we have on LinkedIn. And this includes more than 700 million members, millions of companies and jobs, and thousands of skills and schools. And my team uses all of these to really advance LinkedIn's vision, which is to create economic opportunity for every single member of the workforce. And simply put, one way in which we do that is through research and data sharing to complement traditional data sources. And we are able to do this at scale because, so we can advance a few slides. So next slide, please. Perfect. Here, wonderful. Thank you so much. So the great thing is that we can do this at scale because our data is global and granular, since we're able to look into hundreds of countries and we can go as deep as zip code level data cuts. It is also in real time, which allows us to capture instant trends when we most need them. And this was particularly clear during the peak of the pandemic, when we were able to see what was happening in real time. And we can also recreate time series by capturing the past on any number of new questions that we can have today and tomorrow. Next slide, please. So with this in mind, perfect, next please. Wonderful, thank you. So with this in mind, a lot of the research that we do is on gender in the workforce. And today I will share some of the trends that we're seeing in technology fields in particular, and the opportunities that lie ahead of us based on what data is telling us. We contribute every year to the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report. And last year we did a deep dive into the trends for different types of fast-growing jobs globally. This is what people normally call hot jobs or emerging jobs. And here in this chart, hopefully in the middle, you can see the jobs that have a good gender balance, like in sales and marketing. And to the upper right of the chart, we see roles where women tend to be overrepresented, which many of you may have guessed that feels like HR. And before going into the bottom left of the chart, I'm gonna ask a question that hopefully you're all able to see on the poll, which is, where do we think we observe the largest gender gaps globally? Options are engineering, people and culture, or marketing. I kind of spoiled that already. And I'm not sure I can see the results of the poll, but unfortunately the right answer is engineering. And the second question in the poll is, how big is the gender gap in STEM roles? And there's where we're going now. So if we go to the bottom left of the chart, we actually see that news are not so great, because as of now, we see fewer than 25 women per 100 men in a lot of STEM fields like engineering, data, AI, and cloud computing. On the horizontal axis is where we see what's going on today, and on the vertical axis, we see what we expect to happen tomorrow, because that's how we're measuring the pipeline of talent that could potentially be going into these roles. So all of these suggests that we are definitely facing a big gender gap in these type of roles. It is the largest gender gap across a lot of fields, and there's definitely room for intervention if we want this to change. Next slide, please. So double clicking on artificial intelligence, just to give one example, research with Stanford University shows that effectively across all countries, men are overrepresented in AI roles, which is not a surprise. But actually in some countries like India, South Korea, Singapore, and Australia, women tend to use a higher intensity of AI skills in these roles, which means that they tend to have a more advanced knowledge of the subject on average. And this information is also very relevant because these can help determine how companies hire and how we think about potential case studies to learn from other countries as we look into policies or programs to implement in the future. Next slide, please. So very quickly, finally, at LinkedIn, we do think that understanding these data matters a lot, and a clear example of why comes from the pandemic. You can see here in these charts that women in the labor market were disproportionately affected by the pandemic across all countries and all industries. However, women in industries that were more resilient to the pandemic and to crises in general, like software and IT services, experienced faster and more sustained recovery, which again points at the urgency of addressing gender gaps in technology to prevent other secondary effect gaps that can have long-lasting negative effects on women in particular. All of this is to say that today, women's underrepresentation in technology and STEM fields puts us really at a higher vulnerability, and the data does not show that the problem is going to fix itself. So at LinkedIn, we believe that measuring and understanding these gaps is only the first step to design data-driven programs and policies that can help move faster in the right direction. And we plan to continue to advance this research. Thank you so much, Agnieszka.
Mar, this is a wonderful framing for our discussion today. And it also struck me that this AI index did show, like what you alluded in one of your last slides, that AI business actually grew during the pandemic.
Recording in progress.
So again, you know, I think there's something there, as you said, that should not be left unattended and should be the focus of some targeted interventions. Next, I would like to turn to Margot. Margot, you have noticed a long time ago that there weren't enough women in data science and computational science related fields. So, or maybe they weren't visible, or maybe both. So can you tell us a little bit more about this, and really also what led you to co-found the Women in Data Science Initiative?
Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, I've been in computational sciences, I hate to say it, but for about 40 years. And in that time, I have not seen any increase in percentage of women participation. So when I was a student, starting here, we were estimating at the time 10 to 15% of women at a higher level working actively in code development, for example. Or working in computational mathematics, and data science sits at the interface of so many fields, but definitely statistics, computer science, computational mathematics. And so for data science and AI, it's very similar, the numbers. And when I was a student then, I thought by the time I'm old, which I am now, I suppose, according to my 18-year-old self, this would all have been resolved, because we talked a lot about pipeline. There were a lot of women at the time through affirmative action, through girls in STEM activities, you know, in the 70s and the 80s, again in the 90s. The pipeline looked really strong from and in the younger generations, you know, and has been all the time. Yet we don't see the penetration at higher levels. We don't see the penetration in industry. And so it's still the same as ever, despite many efforts. So interventions are incredibly important, and we're working on those too. And they're not easy, because we've tried, many governments have tried, many organizations have tried for many years to make a difference. Now, in data science, we are particularly driven by this, because data-driven decision-making, which is call it, is becoming so incredibly important. So data has always played a role. You know, things have always been data supported. Things may have been data inspired, but now we're in this age where almost everywhere you look, decision making is supported by data science. So this data-driven decision making is becoming so critical in so many fields, right? So no matter where you turn, politics, industry, education, um, people make decisions based on that. And if you then have only 15%, maybe 20% of the table of the decision makers consisting of women, of course, that is not good. And we see the repercussions of this all the time, right? If you have underrepresentation at the decision table, that's not good for the world. And that's not just in terms of gender, that's also in terms of geography, in terms of culture, in terms of ethnic background. We just see way too way too disproportionate, right? So we don't have equal representation. Now, not only are decisions made there, but of course the power then sits also there, which means that the wealth sits there. And so the other reason for us is to say, hey, by golly, we want everyone to share in this wealth, and that's so incredibly important. Now, the other thing that you then think is, well, data is then becoming sort of the new gold or the new oil. And so when you start thinking about this, it should be easier to share this wealth around the globe, across genders, across cultures, across races, across ethnic backgrounds. Should be easier because we do not have to sit on an oil reservoir. We do not have to sit on a gold mine. In other words, we're not restricted geographically, but yet we don't see that happening. So this democratization or globalization of data is also not happening. So they're really, really important points to talk about. And I know that Mahadia, I'm sure, is one of the people later on who will address this globalization and democratization as well. So in 2015, there was a breaking point for me where I said, okay, I've been in this for so long. I've done many, many activities in mentoring and in trying to help girls in STEM, but we still see all male conferences. We still do not see women promoted. We still see really low penetration rates. So I decided with a colleague or two, hey, you know, we got to change. We've got to try to change this and be more active. So we started Women in Data Science, which is a global organization that does all sorts of things. You know, many conferences all over the world. The Datathon that lowers the barriers to entry for younger girls. We have podcasts. We have outreach to high schools. We've got many other things, workshops, you name it, and we're really now working on a program for intervention, which we call the WITS Academy, which we hope will work, because we've identified, and this is not our science, but by looking at it and over the years, really several reasons why this happens. And one of the biggest reason is still that there are two myths that perpetuate, and I will stop there, but I want to mention those myths. And we still have this happening over and over again. The first myth is that to be successful in this field, in computational sciences and data science and AI, you must have a very strong innate ability, and the emphasis on must have and very strong. And we know that that's not the case. That has been debunked many times. So in innate ability, very strong innate ability, of course, helps, but it is not a requirement. So a lot of people who feel they don't have this don't dare to enter this field, feeling that they cannot be successful. So this is the difference between believing in a fixed mindset, right? We say natural ability is everything, or a growth mindset. But the second myth is that women have less of that innate ability than men. And unfortunately, this is a myth that is still there all the time in popular culture. Even at universities, you see this. You see this also amongst women, that a lot of them believe this. So we're about changing that, and we're about normalizing the presence of women and normalizing the presence of women of all backgrounds, and to show that in teaching, in research, in leadership, of course, women can contribute, and of course, they're fantastic. So that's really what we're trying to do, one one girl and one young woman at a time.
My goodness, Margot, my heart sank when I heard some of your statements that things haven't really changed. And if I heard correctly, 15% or so, we're still at that mark. And
Yeah, these estimates are really hard. So 15% is what we see in Silicon Valley, for example, what we see in a lot of universities at the higher levels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this important connection between these fields, and as you said, the distribution of power, because that's really what's driving economic growth these days and advancements in some of these higher tech solutions that we're talking about. Okay, so maybe I'd like to turn to Mahadia because I know that you're trying to do something about this. Mahadia, tell us about the Tanzania Data Lab and specifically some of the ways that you are trying to empower young women and girls to change some of these statistics, to be part of the data revolution and make a difference through data.
Thank you, Agnieszka, and hello, everyone. So, as Margot said, they are talking about 15%. So, in the context that I'm working in East Africa, Tanzania, where for us, only 1 out of 3 girls is able to complete secondary school. So, at that stage, we are losing 2 girls out of 3. So our challenge, while we are talking about involving more women into the data agenda, our challenge has also been putting women in school. So we have those 2 challenges in our context. And for that has shaped on how we intervene, in a sense that our intervention are staged at different level. So we have intervention at secondary school, where we our strategy is to ensure more women who join secondary school pursue science subject as their career. So we do that in collaboration with Vodacom Foundation, a program called Code Like a Girl, where in 4 days we train them to develop websites so that they understand that it is possible. And while doing that, we realized that because that program, what we do, we advertise, and then we realized that only those who their parents are elite, they will sign up for their kids. And then we decided to have another program, which is Smart Girls, where we go to community schools. We train them on data literacy, also coding skills. So this one has worked a lot. The only challenge that most of those schools don't have computers or power. Some of them, they don't have power. So we rely on holidays to invite them to the lab to train them on the practical skills. So our challenge, not only putting more women into the data agenda, but also has been the infrastructure and the settings. And we also have another program which is called Data for Her. So Data for Her, this targets those early career women, and we want them to stay in ICT-related subjects, data-related roles, as only 30% globally women are in data fields. So for us, the Data for Her is training them how they can use data as a tool for them to climb the ladder to managerial position, as a tool to make their position being felt, because it's not enough to have more women in STEM or women in data field, but is what are they doing in those fields? So that's also a target for our Data for Her program. But we also collaborated with the University of Dar es Salaam to establish Masters in Data Science, which was first Masters in East Africa. And thanks to the Millennium Challenge Corporation and the Data Collaborative for Local Impact, where we have sponsorship for more people to be sponsored in the program, and the priority has been female. But the challenge, even though we want to do 50-50, but it has been challenge getting such women to join the data program. And this year we are glad that under WID's program, and thanks to Margot, we are going to have more scholarship for our women, especially those who are not able to pay their school fees, into the data science program. And the last thing that I wanted to talk, so we are also part of the WIDS program. We run WIDS Dar es Salaam and now WIDS Africa, where we feature English-speaking country from South Africa, from Nairobi. The role of WIDS Africa is to show women that it's possible by inviting those women who have done wonderful work in tech and in data field to showcase their work and share their story. So this is just to show them that it is possible to be a woman in a tech field and also excel. And also this, we normally invite our Code Like a Girl alumni, smart girls, so that they also find those role models that they can relate. So yeah, so that has been our strategy. Thank you.
That's wonderful, Mahadia, and I love that you're already trying to do something about these low numbers, and I understand that this WIDS Africa and WIDS Tanzania that you undertook in collaboration with Margot and broader WIDS went from being kind of an event with 300 women interested in data science back in 2017 to potentially more than 1,000 in the upcoming year. So congratulations for that interest and momentum that you're generating to this issue. I'd like to turn to Kat now. Kat, tell us why MCC cares about data and specifically about getting more women and young women to use it.
Thank you, Agnieszka, and good morning or good afternoon, everyone. So let me just take a little bit of a step back and explain. MCC is a US government agency. We were created in 2004. And our objective is to alleviate poverty through sustainable economic growth. We do this by partnering with countries that show a commitment to investing in people, economic freedom, and ruling justly. And we provide large 5-year grants that we call compacts. And part of our foundation is that we rely on country ownership, that it's the country partners that design and then implement our programs. So back to the question of why MCC cares about data. So first, MCC is a consumer of data. We use data to decide which countries we invest in, which programs to fund, how those programs are going during implementation, and then after the programs are done, what are the lessons learned? We also share all this information publicly, including gender disaggregated data. Next, MCC wants to empower our partners with data. We want them to use data to inform decisions. The ability of a country's national statistics office, including key counterpart ministries and the National Statistics Office, subnational representation, but also communities and citizens throughout the country to notice and address gaps in particular sectors and allocate resources in an evidence-based way. Next, I would say that, as Agnieszka pointed out and other speakers have pointed out, data is necessary in today's world. Data and digitally enabled algorithms permeate every sector. E-government is becoming the norm, and civic technology is enabling citizens throughout the world to hold their governments to account while also enabling local innovation. MCC cares about social inclusion and women's economic empowerment, and we do this by supporting secondary education and workforce participation, supporting initiatives like the D Lab that you heard about from Mahadia, and other initiatives such as YSci, which is Women in Science Camps, where we partner with State Department, Intel, Google, and Caterpillar Foundation to organize in-person and now virtual camps where girls from the US and also partner countries such as Kosovo, let's see, I'm going to get it wrong. Kosovo, Morocco, Georgia, they come together and they learn about robotics and coding and see firsthand. And so some girls who, you know, may have contemplated careers as teachers or doctors then see that there's an entire world open to them. And so throughout our programs, we are looking for opportunities to make sure that benefits are accruing to both men and women. And we use data, but also we're trying to create demand for better data in our partner countries. And we believe that a country's capabilities to use data enables it to drive its own inclusive and resilient development, and that this is critical to a country's ability to capture the benefits in today's rapidly expanding global digital economy. So I'll stop there, and I look forward to our continued discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. And so again, another theme as to why it's important for women in your partner countries to get involved so that they can accrue some of the benefits of investments that are increasingly involve, you know, some of these data or digitally enabled tools, whether it's e-government systems, as you said, or e-health, e-education capabilities, but also to kind of predict their own priorities and be able to drive their development forward in hopefully a gender balanced way. And I think there's no better there than women involved in some of those decisions. Okay, so let's build on this connection a little bit. And I know that the audience is very interested in that connection between data science, digitalization, and development. Margot, I wanted to turn back to you again through your work with WIDS and what you're learning about the pioneering work of many data scientists, including women. Can you point to maybe a specific example of something like that has potentially far-reaching applications that women are either already involved in or they should know about and get involved in now?
Yeah, thank you. There's so many examples of fantastic work done by women around the world in those areas. One of the things that we have certainly seen, and this is clear from every poll we've had, every engagement we've had with the community, is that generally girls and women are very interested in working for what we call social good. That's a bit of a US term, but they really want to work on critical challenges around the world. We see great evidence of that in human rights, for example, as one of the example with fantastic people like Fatima Abu Salem in Lebanon working on refugee crisis, the Human Rights Data Analysis Group, which is has a lot of women working on all kinds of human rights issues around the world. We see many people using data for local economic development. That could be in optimizing agricultural use, also very local, distributed for small farmers. In the environment, climate, of course, local climate change, as well as larger climate change. Many things related to poverty detection. That sounds like a strange example, but it's so important for many foundations that are trying to help to understand where the money that they do have for activities can best go. And so using satellite data, a lot of people are looking for or helping assist finding the right areas. What is really interesting also is to think about data science as it's an incredibly broad field. So very often when we think about data science or AI, we think about Google and Facebook and Twitter and these very large companies that have entered our daily lives. And that is big data. You know, often people conflate the two, also saying data science and AI, that's all about big data. Now, AI is usually, when people talk about AI now, they talk about deep learning, and it requires a lot of data. But the vast majority of data science or data analysis that are happening around the world are actually on small data. And there's an incredible amount of good work that can be done on small data. Also, the vast amount of work that is done in data science around the world is on incomplete data. And we sometimes call this working in the data desert. And that requires a special type of skill, and there's many fantastic people working on that. So if you really want to contribute in these goals that you talked about, you have to have skills in that area. And that's very different than finding or using the latest deep learning algorithms. Right, and so that's one of the things that that we emphasize also, that we want to promote, and we want people to understand that you do not need a super big computer, nor an awfully large data set, nor skills that are in the area of convoluted neural networks or whatever you have, high level skills like that. The latest and the greatest models to make incredible differences. I think most differences in the world are actually made with spreadsheets, with very robust and relatively accessible data tools.
Margot, that's such a wonderful point. And, you know, I feel like data is such a scary term, and when you use it in data science, but you're right. I think that the leverage and the opportunities are in that small data and in massive use of that small data, hopefully by more women from the ground up. And so on that point, Mahadia, I was wondering if you could provide a specific example of a young woman that participated in one of your programs. How has her ability to use that kind of smaller or more complicated data changed her life, and also, or what is she working on? Mahadia, could you hear that?
Yeah, sure, I heard that. So we have so many examples. For instance, we had once trained nurses, as Margot said, that it's that small data, and it's that those simple data skills also matter. So we trained the nurse on data literacy and data manipulation using Excel. When she went back to the hospital, she realized with just that data skill, she realized that their data collection tool needed an improvement. So they were providing free treatment for elderly children and women, but then they were not collecting data, for instance, if some of those are insured. So if they have health insurance, they did not have to provide free services to them because they could use the insurance. And so they decided, and then also categorizing using age groups, etc. So she just used simple techniques to improve the tool in the rural area. And so that changed even her life, because she was also promoted because her existence was felt, and they also saw the benefit of improving the data collection tool. So that is one example. So nurse with no background in computing, but we have also so many other examples for the Code Like a Girl, for instance, Code Like a Girl program, where we are training girls on simple skills, where, for instance, one girl launched a website where it talks about statistics of her village, what they do, to what extent. So she's sharing that data to the public so that people could come and invest and see why they should invest in the area. So you could see that there is a span of benefit of using data to inform decision from the lower level. And we had so many. I have so many other examples. Like one girl realized through data training, she realized that she was able to analyze the data and realized that the ratio, book to student ratio is actually worse. So she decided to launch a simple website where she was lending used books. So you could share you could put online your used books and somebody else could lend. So yeah, so data skills are so important, and those simple skills also matters a lot. Yeah, thank you, Agnieszka.
That's wonderful. And again, I know, Mahadia, you're just a treasure chest of specific examples. So I encourage the audience, if you ever want to really know why that small data matters and how to really build a solid foundation for the demand in data, Mahadia is just a fantastic resource. Kat, I wanted to get back to you. So on this connection between, again, data and development, what is your thinking about how more women involved in data-related fields could help advance the 2030 agenda?
Yes, thanks for that question. I think that within MCC programs, I think we have several examples of where small data has been used. For example, informing farmers on weather conditions and local market prices, for example, or through a challenge where we partnered with the Tanzania Data Lab. One of the apps was for students to access tutoring in Tanzania in real time and get support. So I think that we've supported sort of small scale development solutions, if you will, and then kind of larger scale. And one example I'll give is with our program with the Republic of Georgia. We partnered with San Diego State University to create STEM degrees. And so the Georgian students and other international students could stay in Tbilisi and earn US degree. And one of the most popular majors among women was computer science. And so I think that I stressed before the importance of supporting formal education opportunities for women in order to increase the number of potential data scientists. So, and one comment I'd like to make is like none of us have mentioned COVID yet, but I think that COVID has really accelerated the importance and the integration of data-related fields and digitalization into our world today. And I'll just give another example, which is not an MCC example, but I think it's very relevant. For example, in Togo, they were able to use artificial intelligence to identify citizens through their national ID cards and couple that with biometric data to put in place a digital payment system that was able to reach 800,000 men and women who were particularly vulnerable because of economic changes and lockdowns. And so they weren't able to earn their living as they usually did. And so this is an example of where data-enabled solutions can ensure that fewer people are left behind. So I think that all of we have to sort of cover the waterfront, if you will, because I do think that in order to have a good pipeline of women in data science, we do need to also support their continuation in formal education so that they have the basic problem solving and reading and writing skills to be able to access data solutions.
Yeah, thank you for that great example. And again, I think it emphasizes the need for more women to be engaged in some of the establishment of such systems to make sure that they're not only accurate and not biased, but also, reaching those who are most likely to be left behind. So this is the part of the panel where I'd like to take a look at what's happening a bit in the chat. And I see that there's a question from Dolphin Sharma, and her question for the panel is, how do we tackle these different barriers to entry for women in data on an individual level? What can people like me do to help? And Mar, I'll just start with you because I know that you were looking at some interesting trends. So where would you start focusing on? And then I'll also ask other panelists to comment on this very practical question.
Thank you. That's actually a great question, and one that we face a lot, because at LinkedIn, we also think of what are the kind of recommendations that we can give members to help them break into these kind of roles. But I think there's different aspects in these questions, in breaking these barriers. The first one has to do with demystifying a lot of the issues that have prevented women to traditionally go into data. And these are very well documented in the literature and have to do with implicit biases, explicit biases, also all the education challenges that were mentioned by Mahadia and by Margot. So there's definitely a big role in continuing to understand what's going on in education and trying to break those long-standing obstacles that have prevented women to continue to go into STEM roles. Second, I think there's a big role of role models, and there is where just right now encouraging women to grow, women who are already in these fields, encouraging them and supporting them to grow and to develop and to serve as images that younger women and younger generations can look up to see what they can become, plays a big role, not only on social media, but also in the common workplace, because it's really hard for somebody who is entering the workplace to imagine themselves as a leader in data science or a leader in any STEM field if there's no one who looks like them. Third, I think there's a big role in understanding recruitment practices and shedding more light on how these gaps are shaping the industries right now, and helping recruiters be more aware and be more systematic about hiring women. And finally, I think Dolphin's question was pointing out what young women can do today. I think there's a lot. First thing I would say, being these panels, ask questions, participate, be part of the community. And second, something that is preventing a lot of women who are in similar roles, or maybe, let's say, fields like sociology that work a lot with small data or work close to data, but would like to break into data. Something that prevents them from doing so is believing that the gap is so big, there's so much to learn. And actually, what we see on LinkedIn data is that the overlap in skills is huge, and that those transitions are feasible. And it's a matter of going through the networking, learning marginal skills that will help do those transitions, and just talking to people and believing that one can do it, because really what we see is that there's a lot of power coming from those transitions into data fields.
Wow, so there's a lot of recommendations, of very specific recommendations there, Mar. Thank you for that. Mahadia, I was also just curious if you could come in here with, I mean, you had mentioned something that really struck me about two-thirds of young girls don't complete secondary education. Of those that do complete it, what are some of the specific barriers or day-to-day challenges that you deal with as part of your program and getting more girls to come in to benefit from some of the skill building that you offer? And what are you doing about them, of course?
So yeah, the 1/3 is what we are competing for them to take in, to be in STEM. So you can imagine that the competition is quite real. And the major challenge that we have seen is that missing the role model. And for us, for instance, in Tanzania, for you to be able to go to the university, you need to get either the first division, you'll be assured of getting the scholarship. And so that's the case. So most people, most women feel that getting first division is not easy. So they decide to take other subjects that they can take them to the higher education, which is good because it has to, you have to be taken to the higher level. So they are shying away from mathematics because of that. So what we are trying to do is actually changing the perception, because I am a testimony of changing the perception as well. How do we structure our programs or the learning in such a way that they can find that is possible? So for us, it has been not, I wouldn't say simplifying, but designing in such a way that it's easy for people to learn using the right terms, because sometimes we forget ourselves liking using AI, prediction, learning, and so on and so forth. But then what do they do? Because the end goal here is the output and what can be done. And so for us has been structuring our programs in such a way that it can be possible. And we do a modular programs in such a way that one can jump in at different level depending on their background. And we believe that especially in Africa, women are natural data analysts, because if you ask women where to get affordable clothes, affordable type of grocery, they'll know where it is. So that is data. So how do we structure our programs? So that has been working for us. Structure a program in such a way that they can feel that it's a learning path that they can afford to take. Yeah.
Oh, I think that's wonderful advice. And so really beginning with what is the problem in a sense, and what are you trying to solve? And then data is just something that comes in, and even if it's simple data. There is also interest, Mahadia, about the Tanzania Data Lab project, and is it still working? Absolutely, I'll just say that. And in fact, Mahadia, maybe you can list the website, or we can put the website on the chat box so that you can find more information about the Tanzania Data Lab and its programs. So maybe just a quick addition from Margot. What are you still seeing as the barriers for more women entering these fields, whether in the simple or in the more complex data science fields?
Yeah, I think you can summarize it as not having a sense that they belong, for all kinds of reasons. You know, that they may not have the skills that it takes, that it may not be welcome because the culture is not as inclusive and inviting. And so we work on all of those aspects. I talked earlier about these myths that are still being perpetuated. But what we find is that the barrier to entry for a lot of girls and women is simply too high. You know, they hesitate. They also often don't know how impactful you can be. And so when we go, and this is mostly where have we been? Europe, the United States, India, some places in Africa as well. Go to high schools, for example, or secondary education institutes, then we find that a lot of the girls really have no clue what it even means to be in that field, and they associate it often with Silicon Valley and these big companies. So that is a really great way, just raising awareness, having this educational outreach at an early age can really help as well. And honestly, I think a lot of the barriers that we're talking about are deeply ingrained perceptions deeply ingrained, and that starts very early. That we've seen evidence that that starts in elementary school, where girls start to feel that maybe they don't have what it takes, because that's still perpetuated, in many places. And so we're really wanting to reach much deeper down and make sure that right from the get-go, girls in elementary and secondary school do not get those messages, not from the teachers, and they often get it from the teachers, not from their parents, not from the community. And everything that Mar and Mahadia have already said, and Kat, they're spot on.
Yes, so again, this importance, I think, of maybe related to interventions of starting them earlier, as early as possible to begin changing those perceptions. So I know we're really nearly at the end, but as we close and before we close, I'd like to get back to each of you in a very rapid fire question. What specific point or insight from this session caught your attention, and would you share with your daughter, advisee, or other women out there about this topic? And I'll start with you, Margot.
Oh, sure. just the incredible global reach of data and the importance everywhere.
Yeah. Mahadia, what about you?
For me, show them what they can do with data to build their appetite. Yeah.
A taste of what's possible. That's wonderful. Mar.
Yeah, for me, it's that we have more data than ever to understand the gender gap today, and it's in our hands to actually close it and to advance in the direction that we want to go and to keep ourselves accountable.
That's wonderful. And Kat, what message would you give?
If you combine women's resilience and creativity with data skills, imagine the transformation that can happen.
Oh, that's wonderful and truly inspiring. So again, I wanted to thank everyone for listening. I hope that you enjoyed hearing from Mar, Kat, Margot, and Mahadia as much as I did. I feel like I've learned a lot, and really amidst this accelerating global digital revolution and the amazing amount of data that is out there, as Mar alluded to, more women really need to use it. Again, one of the statistics that I feel is incredibly powerful is that by about 2040, 90% of the jobs out there will have some sort of data-related element to it. So it is crucial that women choose to use data so that they are not left behind. And with that, again, thank you to everyone. And we hope, we want to thank you for all the work you're already doing, and hope to see you again for another conversation with hopefully more progress than in the last 40 years.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.